Shumai guys, welcome back to the Life to the Full podcast, the podcast that helps you make the most of your time here on Earth. My name's Dav Morse, I'm your host. It's once again a pleasure to be back on the airwaves. Got to give some shout outs to people first of all. First of all, thanks to everybody who's listened during March. March was my top month ever on the podcast in terms of downloads. So great to see that is growing. If you are a listener from Hackney or Wallingford in Oxfordshire or even Hawaii, as new listeners, you are very welcome. It is a pleasure to have you here. There it is. What are your biggest financial mistakes? Your biggest financial regrets, maybe? This was a question which I saw on a Facebook group the other day and thought, ooh, wouldn't that make a good podcast episode if I could share my worst financial mistakes so that you guys can learn a little and maybe avoid some of the pitfalls that I fell into. So let's start with mistake number 1. My most recent big financial mistake was when I purchased a camper van. I had this dream, this idea of being able to buy a camper van, take the family travelling, and basically have a good time in this camper van. I thought, there's a nice, reasonably priced one on Facebook Marketplace, £6,500. That sounds like a bargain. It's already been done up into a camper, and I thought, that's great. So I went to meet this chap, and I don't know if he knew what he was doing. He must have known what he was doing, but he sold the dream to me. He said, yes, my wife and I have travelled around Europe in this. We spent 6 months travelling around, and we had this great experience in Italy and this great experience in Spain. And I thought, yes, this is the one for me. He said, my family's now growing, so we now got 2 kids, so that's why I'm getting rid of it. And I thought, okay, that sounds good. So I paid him £6,500 to buy this camper van. And I thought, I've got myself a bargain here. On the way home, got to the motorway and got up to 70 miles an hour, or so I thought. I watched the speedometer go and thought, hang on, I'm pretty sure I'm going faster than 25 miles an hour. The guy had taken us out for a test run, but clearly we hadn't gone faster than 25 miles an hour or hadn't noticed, but the speedometer was stuck at 25 miles an hour. That took me absolutely ages to figure out. I took it to 3 garages, and eventually I had to take it to the Ford garage, the Ford dealership, to get that fixed. I had to buy new batteries for the camper van bit of it. And I spent probably, including taxes and insurance and all that kind of stuff, I probably spent almost £1,000 on this van. And then it failed the MOT when the first MOT came round. And I didn't even use it that much. I used it a couple of times. Took the kids a couple of times just for a little overnight. And that was great fun, but didn't really make the most of it. I took it to the garage to have an MOT, and they said, sorry, there's some welding that needs doing, and that's going to be £3,000 because I need to cost in the labour of ripping out all the camper van, basically, because the welding that needed to be done was too close to the insulation on the van. So the guy said, basically, I need to strip out all of the inside of the camper van, take out the insulation, and then weld both wheel arches, and then put it all back together. And that kind of labour is going to take me a long time, so it's going to be £3,000. And I thought, do you know what? I've had enough. I'm not going to pay that. So I put it on Facebook Marketplace and thought, it's not got an MOT, I'll see if I can get something for it. And a mechanic from up in the valleys said, yeah, I'll give you £3,000 for it. And I thought, well, at this stage, I'm gonna have to pay for tax for another year if I don't sell it, and the costs are just gonna keep going up. I need to cut my losses and run. So I sold this. So I ended up being down about £4,500, which is not a great result. So what are the lessons? Actually, before we get to the lessons, the end of the story is this guy on Facebook Messenger then sent me a message 2 days later saying, "Oh, got it through the MOT." He was a mechanic, and yeah, I found this chap to do some welding for me. He said, I said, "How much do you want for it?" And he said, don't worry about it. I was like, "Oh, come on, you got to, I don't know, 20 quid?" I said, so I gave him 80 quid for the welding work and a day's work getting the van in shape, and that was it. So this guy had a bargain of a camper van. It was a great deal for this guy, and I just felt a bit sad that I'd missed out on the camper van, but also £4,500. What lessons should be learnt from this? Lesson number 1. Oh, I didn't even tell you the other thing that I was going to do with it. The other thing I was going to do with it is I was going to rent it out, and it was going to pay for itself. I was going to rent it out on a camper van website, and so people would be able to borrow it, rent it, and then I would make my money back. And I thought, this is going to be a great investment. This is going to be something that's going to make me money. It's not going to cost me anything because I'll be able to charge people and they'll pay me £80 a night, and then it'll pay itself back within this short amount of time. I was sadly mistaken. It never got even into a state where I could rent it out. So what are the lessons? The lessons are, don't invest in something unless you understand what you're investing in. I know basically zero about cars, about vans, and I thought that it would be a good idea to invest in something like this. It wasn't. That was the biggest mistake. I didn't understand what I was getting myself into. I didn't understand how to look after a van, how to make the repairs, how to, make a good job of it, really. And so that's the number 1 lesson. Invest in something that you understand. That's it, really, for that. I mean, sometimes you make an investment, sometimes you make a loss. At the end of the day, I wasn't too bad. I wasn't too sad. I put it down to experience, and I thought, well, the other investments that I've made over my time have gone up in value more than that. So all it is just a game. Sometimes the number goes up, sometimes the number goes down. This day, it was a down day. But overall, think of the long term. I'm going to invest the rest of that money. Instead of investing in something I don't understand, I'm going to invest it in the stock market, or invest it in Bitcoin, or invest it in property, or something else which I've got more of an idea about. How about financial mistake number 2? Now, this actually happened before financial mistake number 1, and it actually is a huge, huge financial mistake. One that has cost me upwards of £100,000 easily. Let me tell you about it. When I was 22 years old, I got married, and I started my first job, and I bought my first house, all within the space of 1 week. Back in 2005, you didn't need a job. You didn't need a deposit to get a mortgage. You could just rock up at the bank and say, "I don't have a deposit. I don't have a job, but I promise to get a job." And they'd say, "Sure, here you go. Here's the entire loan amount." So we actually bought a flat in Canterbury for £133,000. And I put nothing down for it, essentially. Now, what happened was, over time, my father-in-law said, why don't I be your mortgage provider? So he essentially became my mortgage provider. He had a few £100,000 lying around from a business endeavour that he wanted to put to work and earn some money on, or help his family out. So we started paying him as if we were paying the mortgage, and then we moved into another house, and we rented out the flat, and everything was going well. The value had gone down because it was 2009, 2010, post-financial crisis, but we didn't need to sell, so things were fine. We were just collecting the rent. We were renting to a young couple from church, and they were ideal tenants for us, really. And we got to move to a bigger house, and then, which we also bought just at the beginning of 2008. So this was really before everything crashed down. So the time came where my father-in-law said, well, I need my money back. And so I thought the only option that I had was to sell the flat, sell the house, and pay back my father-in-law, and then I could use the rest to get a normal mortgage with a normal deposit, because the market had changed by then. We wanted to move to Cardiff as well, so it was just going to be a case of, let's just sell everything and pay my father-in-law back, and then we'll just carry on like most normal people, getting a mortgage with a deposit when we buy a house in Cardiff. If I only knew that I could have got a buy-to-let mortgage on that first rental flat, then we wouldn't have sold it. I could have got a mortgage, I could have paid my father-in-law back the money that he wanted, and I could have kept the flat and kept it as a rental property. If I had done that, we sold it in 2012 for a loss of £18,000. That was already after selling the house for a loss of about £7,000 or £8,000. So we're down £25,000 on these properties. But if I'd only known that we could have got a buy-to-let mortgage, we would have done that. If I could have held on to that flat is now worth at least £100,000 more than what we sold it for, and we would have been able to collect rent over the last 13 years. That would have made a massive difference to our financial situation. So what are the lessons? Knowledge is important. The reason that I had to sell the flat was I didn't know any better. I didn't know that there was another way. I didn't know that it was possible to do that. I didn't know about buy-to-let mortgages. I didn't know that that was something that I could have done to keep onto this asset which was producing an income. Knowledge is incredibly valuable. So if you take away anything from this episode, let it be this. Educate yourself. Learn about stuff. Educate yourself about finances, about mortgages, about the stock market, about Bitcoin, about investments. Because if you don't, it could be costing you, most likely is costing you, hundreds of thousands of pounds. Yes, overall, my financial situation is far better than it was back then. And the losses that we've made over the time are far outweighed by the gains that we've made in other areas. But the lack of knowledge was a big, big killer for us. Where do you get your knowledge from? Listen to podcasts. Listen to the Life to the Full podcast. Listen to other podcasts. Listen to Radical Personal Finance. Listen to the Property Podcast, two of my favourites. Watch YouTube, read books. Rob Dix is a great author. Check out his books on property investment and money in general. Educate yourself. Learn, because if you don't, you will be paying the price for the longest time. Short episode today. That's it. I hope you've enjoyed listening to me talk about my financial mistakes. I'd love to hear about some of your financial mistakes. Let me know on Instagram or Threads, Life to the Full podcast. And if you are new around here, that's absolutely wonderful. If you've listened to maybe 3 or 4 episodes or maybe more, and you haven't left me a review, I'd love you to do that. It helps the show grow, and it helps encourage me when I see the number of downloads go up. It helps me to share the message with more people. Until next time, peace out.